it can be challenging to separate fact from fiction when it comes to Calamity Jane. Since she was illiterate, much of what we know about her has been passed down through stories she told, dime novels, a few historical records, and conjecture. Yet one thing everyone can agree on is that her story will endure for generations. Martha Jane Canary was born on May 1st, 1852, in Princeton, Missouri. However, some scholars believe she was not born until 1856. Her father was a gambler, and little is known about her mother. Martha was the eldest of 6 children, and they became orphans at a young age after the deaths of their parents in the late 1860s. Her mother died after the family moved to Montana, or on the way to Montana, depending on your source, followed by her father's death after relocating the family to Utah to become a farmer. As a teenager, Martha became the head of her family, taking responsibility for her younger siblings and moving to Wyoming. Not all of her siblings stayed with her, as some were adopted by other families. However, she kept in touch with some of them throughout her life. She would often bounce around from one town to another, finding work wherever she could. She worked as a dishwasher, cook, and on farms and ranches, and it is believed she occasionally prostituted herself to get by. To make life easier in the West, during that era, she began wearing men's clothing. It was in the early 1870s that she began using the name Calamity Jane. There are multiple stories about how she earned the name. According to Jane, she worked as a scout for the U.S. Army during campaigns against Native American tribes, and it was given to her by Captain Egan. However, like many stories about her, this claim is disputed. It is more likely that she never worked with the military, was not involved in any conflicts with Native Americans, and in fact, never killed anyone during her life. In July 1876, while in Fort Laramie, Jane met Bill Hickok, who was on his way to Deadwood. She joined his wagon train and traveled to Deadwood, South Dakota. Although they were friends, they were not necessarily as close as often portrayed. The connection between them has been exaggerated by movies, TV shows, and books rather than supported by actual facts. It was a series of dime store novels about Deadwood that led to her fame. A series called Deadwood Dick featured fictional stories of her adventures on the frontier. Contrary to the tales in the Deadwood Dick stories, many of her jobs were quite mundane, such as cleaning houses and working in restaurants. When Wild Bill Hickok was shot, Jane supposedly attempted to take revenge on his killer by attacking him with a cleaver. Jane continued to live in Deadwood after Hickok's death, taking on various odd jobs such as stagecoach driving and nursing. She famously helped care for victims of a smallpox epidemic in the late 1870s. Naturally, her love of drinking also became a well-known part of her life. In the mid-1890s, Jane capitalized on her fame by appearing in Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show and other traveling acts. Many of the stories we know about her come from this period, as she spun tall tales about her adventures in the Wild West. She even dictated a short biography, which is widely regarded as being as fictional as most other accounts written about her. Her storytelling and boisterous personality captivated audiences, but her unpredictable behavior, fooled by her heavy drinking, often caused tensions with her fellow performers. By 1901, Jane was back in Montana, alone, drunk, and poor. Details about Jane's family life are as unclear as everything else about her. According to Jane, and contrary to most films about her, she never had a romantic relationship with Wild Bill Hickok. The two were simply friends during the time that they spent together. Jane appears to have been married twice and had 4 children, 2 of whom survived into adulthood, while 2 died at birth or shortly after. Her first husband was William Bill Steers, who was approximately 10 years younger than her. With Bill, she had her first daughter. They were not together long. A few years later, around 1888 or 1889, she met Clinton Burke. The couple stayed together until around 1896. This shows that while Jane is often associated with masculine traits like shooting guns, heavy drinking, and wearing men's clothing, she was also a woman who embraced domestic life at times. She wore dresses, attempted to live with her husband and children, and, according to one account, even tried to settle down by opening an inn with her family. However, Jane seemed unable to stay in one place for long. She left her family to perform in Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show, take part in speaking engagements and tours, and in 1901, she appeared at the Pan American Exposition. Jane's legacy is often linked with that of Wild Bill Hickok, despite the fact that they only knew each other for a brief time. It is also shaped by the iconic image she cultivated, the gun-toting, men's clothing-wearing, horse-riding cowgirl. This persona was popularized through dime store novels and movies. However, there were many sides to Jane. She was forced to grow up quickly after the death of her parents. She was an entertainer and storyteller. She was also a wife and mother, though likely not a particularly good one. Jane cared deeply for her friends and helped those in need when she could. Yet, her life was also marked by her struggle with alcoholism, an addiction that often left her destitute, relying on handouts from friends and strangers. In late September of 1903, Jane was drinking heavily, had fallen ill, and was staying at a hotel in Terry, South Dakota, a small mining village near Deadwood. She died at the hotel on Saturday, August 1st, 1903, reportedly from pneumonia. Jane was buried at Mount Moriah Cemetery next to Wild Bill, fulfilling what some believe was her final wish. Calamity Jane died over 120 years ago, yet she remains an icon of independence in the Old West. Her larger-than-life persona, a mix of fact and folklore, continues to inspire books, films, and TV shows, ensuring her memory will live on for generations to come.